Welcome to Shonen Flop Chibi, a first impressions mini-episode where we talk about the first chapter of the series we'll be covering in depth next week. I'm Jordan, and with me today, as usual, is my co-host David. Say hi, David.
Hi, David.
You got it.
I learned from your feedback from the last Chibi.
I'm proud of you.
So now Jordan's like, in every intro, David's gonna look really, really stupid.
That's the complete design of this show.
Fucking nailed it.
But speaking of which, hi, David, what series are we covering this week?
We are talking about Highschool Family, and if you can't tell, I'm very excited about talking about it.
Well, that's not the full title. It's Highschool Family Kokosei Kazoku, which I only say because I found out the hard way. It is impossible to just Google Highschool Family. Did you know that?
That makes a lot of sense. That was probably very smart they added the subtitle, because otherwise, yeah, it's a very generic name for a manga.
Well, I think that's just what it's called in Japan, Kokosei Kazoku.
Interesting. I know sometimes, like, with Matama, they add subtitles as, like, part of the branding, and it's not intended of the original series. That's my guess, though, is that maybe they couldn't copyright just Highschool Family. It's created by Ryou Nakama.
Like One Piece, my Nakama?
Sure.
Ryou friendship.
By the way, I don't think we actually said, but just a heads up, listeners, we are going to be doing another recommendation episode because Highschool Family is still running, but this is a series, much like Mashle and Chainsaw Man, we think everybody should read. It's just a lot of fucking fun. You probably heard about us already talking about it in our previous episode on Phantom Seer, where we really wanted to talk more about Highschool Family than Phantom Seer, so fuck it. We're just doing an episode about Highschool Family so we could finally read something really good.
This series rules. No spoilers. Or, you know what? No. Spoilers for the episode are on the fucking table because this is not a flop. This is a fucking recommendation episode. We do love this stupid fucking series.
Yeah. Before we, though, go into why we kept reading after the first chapter, why don't we talk about what happens in the first chapter and what our initial impressions were when we read it.
Kotaro Ayatani is a 15-year-old boy getting ready to start his first day of high school. But just as he's about to leave, he's confronted by his father, a middle-aged man with a strange face named Ichiro, who reveals that he will also be attending high school. Kotaro starts freaking out, but is interrupted by his little sister Haruka, who reveals that she too will be attending high school, and that they will be bringing their really weird-looking cat named Gomez, who is dressed in his own school uniform. Kotaro then tries to complain to his mom Shizuka, but as you probably already guessed, she too is going to high school. The chapter ends with a mortified Kotaro walking to high school for the first time with his significantly happier family in tow.
Yeah, that's really what all that happens. This one was kind of weird where usually in Shonen Jump, the first chapter is like a big triple chapter. It's usually 50 to 60 pages. This one was just a straight, 18 pages. So that's all they do is it's just him getting ready for his first day at school and finding out everyone, including Gomez, the cat. Oh, I love Gomez. We're going to talk about Gomez a lot in the main episode, I'm sure. But yeah, so they're all going to high school with him. So we don't actually see him actually attending high school with his family just yet. But stay tuned because I have a pretty strong feeling that's what's going to happen because I have read this series. So I literally know what's going to happen next.
David's cheating.
I am, yeah. So unfortunately, I really was tempted to give some predictions and be super accurate for the first 20 chapters and be like, oh, I also read all those chapters, so that probably helped with my guess, but I thought that was a little too silly. Because if I keep being right about my guesses, people are going to think I am cheating, so I was like, ugh, I can't put that in the mix.
No, totally. You actually would be cheating here.
Yeah.
So one thing I did want to point out about this series, and it's very apparent in the first chapter, first of all, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
The second thing, the big thing, is there's almost a political angle here that I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why Kotaro's parents want to be high schoolers is because they both have middle school education. Because in Japan, it's not as simple where it's just oh, you graduated middle school, now you go to high school. You have to get into high school.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people in Japan, a bunch of older people, who absolutely wanted to have that next rung of education, but they just were unable to do so.
Yeah, it's like how in America there's a ton of people that don't have college education.
Exactly. It's very similar to how we do college here. It's just that in Japan it starts at high school.
Oof, God. I don't even know what I would have done if I had to have dealt with that bullshit.
Oh god, it would have been awful. So obviously the manga is not trying to be super overtly political. It's not a hard-hitting takedown of society, but that element is there. It's like how Breaking Bad only works because the US healthcare system is so bad that it pushed the main character to start selling meth. Sorry for spoiling Breaking Bad, everybody.
What a fucking great show. Yeah, how dare you spoil the first episode of a TV show? Much like how we're spoiling the first chapter of this manga.
The first episode of the most watched TV show of the 2010s.
I love that show. But anyway, so Jordan, though, really, what would you say in the first chapter made you say, yeah, I'll keep reading?
Well, first of all, the dad's face.
His dad's face is so great.
It's such a weird-looking face.
Yeah, I love how first chapter has like 3 color photos, and one of them is just like a very staunch look at the dad looking at his son telling him he's going to high school.
Stoic is how I would describe it, you know? There's one panel where it's just his dad with this weird face looking completely deadpan, talking to his son and just saying, Kotaro, today your dad starts high school. And I was immediately, I'm reading this.
Yeah.
I am fucking on board. You got me.
I also love how the last color page is like a family photo, and I really appreciate that. One thing, if I ever made a series, is I would really want to establish like what the official colors of characters are early on so there's not confusion, because I've seen a lot of issues with that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate they're like, here is a full body view of the entire cast in color so you know exactly what they're supposed to look like.
It's definitely not going to be as confusing with High School Family as it would be with, like, say, JoJo when they do it. Because, like, how many different colors can you give these people, you know? They're just wearing kind of the same uniforms every day, you know? But I do think it's nice, I agree.
It's not hard to tell the characters apart, especially because his dad is like a foot taller than his son.
The dad's a foot taller than his son. He's got that weird face. The mom is an attractive anime woman. Kotaro is Kotaro. He's just like a teenager. His little sister is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I love his little sister. She's just this defiant, smart 6-year-old little girl.
Yeah, I was rereading it again. I noticed that there is some masterful paneling work in this series. Every single thing from the paneling, the layout, to the actual art style chosen was intentionally on purpose. This isn't like one where he literally can't draw better than this. I would not be surprised if the person who draws High School Family actually can draw if he needs to.
Here's the thing. A lot of comic book artists and a lot of pen and ink artists, you can tell how good they actually are at art by how they handle clothing.
Yeah.
Because clothing is really fucking difficult. But this artist, when you look at how he does it, the faces look funny, but he has the correct folds there. Like, to give you an example, in Beast Children, when you would have arms and legs, the form that would be described by the lines, they would just open and close at very strange angles, making it look like, oh, that's not actually describing the correct thickness. Whereas the High School Family guy, no, that's absolutely describing that body part correctly, I would say.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say something about Phantom Seer. I mentioned this to you, but after I read a series called Phantom Seer, there's like a period of time where I'm like, is it me? Do I just not like manga? Have I just grown out of it or something? But then I read High School Family and like, no, that series just sucked.
Yeah, I sometimes will read series that make me really think man, should I keep doing this show? Then we read High School Family.
Yeah.
I'm still back in it, baby. I remember we had a really long streak where we read bad series, and I was like, dude, we gotta read some series that are not dog shit, because we keep saying everything is a flop.
Hey man, if it is, it is.
I know, right?
Shonen Jump doesn't want me to keep saying their shit is bad. They gotta start making shit that isn't bad. Which they have, as we're talking about. Hey.
Exactly. I am actually really surprised the series has already made it to 35 chapters. We'll see. It's still got probably another 6 months where it's going to be a question if it gets canceled or not. But I think if it makes it past chapter 50 or 60, then they'll just keep it in the long run.
At the very least, there'll be a point where if it gets canceled, it'll be well, it had a really good run.
Yeah, this was just a fun series.
Do you have any gauge on its popularity? Do you think it's in danger of being canceled?
Here's the problem. No one in the West seems to talk about this series. Everything else comes up Sakamoto Days, but I was checking in, this series has 3 reviews.
That's so sad.
Yeah, this is really a gem that I really wish more people were aware of, because it's just such a fun series. I don't even know if it has a dedicated subreddit.
David, I just realized we haven't mentioned Gomez.
Fuck, dude.
We gotta talk about fucking Gomez.
That's the main reason. So Gomez the cat, fucking love him. He's the body of a cat, but he has an anime person face on it, and it just looks really fucking cursed.
The author is drawing this cat incorrectly.
On purpose.
God, there's one panel, I think it's actually in the second chapter, so sorry for spoilers, where Gomez is just sitting in the main character's mother's arms, and his arms are crossed. Just in a way that a cat would never, ever do.
I mean, my favorite Gomez thing was from a chapter a month ago. There's a shot of the classroom, and Gomez is just sitting really casually in his high school uniform, at a desk with his sleeves rolled up, and his paws are just on his face, when you put your elbow on the table and your hand on your face. He's just sitting like that, really relaxed. And it makes no sense for a cat, one, to have rolled up its own sleeves, or two, how it can naturally be sitting like that. And it's just such a casual pose that they just play it off completely straight. By the way, in this series, everyone knows Gomez is a cat, just no one really questions it. It's not like one of those like, oh, we're just gonna say he's like a really weird looking person. No, they know he's a fucking cat.
Yeah.
Which just makes it even better.
One of the funniest things about this series is that the only one who really thinks a lot of this shit is weird is Kotaro.
Yeah, everyone else thinks it's perfectly normal for, like a 50-year-old man to be, on a high school volleyball team. I love it. Jordan, you love it. It's going to be a challenge to nitpick, probably much like Chainsaw Man, really what the issues were of the series. But, we made this series because we enjoy a challenge.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Everyone should read this series.
The series rules. This is definitely one of those series that I would recommend to somebody who doesn't like manga. It's so fucking weird, and it's so not what you would expect from a Shonen Jump manga. It's like King in that sense. It is refreshing. It's also a little bit worrying, because I fear for this manga's future. I want to protect it.
I would be very sad if this gets canceled.
It's like Spirit Busters and fucking King and fucking... I can't think of any other ones, to be honest.
Yeah, these all pull from the same well of manga style. Would you actually, in hindsight, do you think that Bone Collection was like a really shitty version of this type of manga?
Bone Collection tried to be 3 or 4 different things, and all of them were shit. I think there was a brief period where Bone Collection might have been doing something that was somewhat similar to this manga in terms of gags, but that was when they weren't trying to be Bleach, and it was such a lower quality that it just doesn't remind me of it at all.
That's fair. Oh, I got Bone Collection.
Yeah, so next, on the normal episode, we have a 6-word summary. However, for this series, we are only reading 1 chapter, so we simply have a single word, a power word. David, what is your power word for this series?
Do you want to take a guess? I feel pretty good you might know what I'm going to say.
Gomez?
Yes, that's what I had written down as Gomez. By the way, so on our Discord, we have custom emojis. I think we have emojis from like 4 series. We have it from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Gurren Lagann, and then we have Gomez as our anime manga custom emojis for the Discord. So we just spam Gomez's emoji sometimes in the Blessed Images chat. Yeah, how about you, Jordan?
This one's tough because, I don't want to just say hilarious, because that sucks. It tells you nothing. Clever. It's fucking clever. It's a very understated series. Crazy stuff is happening, but it's played straight.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, it knows that it's obvious enough where it doesn't have to push a joke until it just isn't funny anymore,
Oh, yeah. This series, if it was made by someone worse, they would just tread these jokes into the ground. I imagine they would have a million oh, the dad is old. Or they would have done the cliche of being Gomez is, he's French and, or some dumb shit that you see in a lot of shitty kids movies where they have to bring an animal to school.
He's my cousin from the old country.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that stuff how everyone owns who they are, everyone knows the dad is 50 years old, everyone knows Gomez is a cat. There's just a lot of development and warmth. Also, this series is just very wholesome.
Yeah.
This is a series where if you have a bad day, if you want to read something that is just going to be a fun time, this series is low stakes. It's just people going to high school and having a good time. There's some excitement that happens, but ultimately nothing really matters in this series that you have to stress about.
Yeah, no, this is a very easy to read series. It's a very enjoyable series, and it's a lot of fun. One of my favorite jokes that we didn't mention is just how Kotaro is wait, you took high school entrance exams? And his dad's yeah, I was sitting behind you.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, is when his dad says that, his speech bubble covers who is sitting behind him. And then a few pages later, it turns out his sister was sitting behind his dad. And the bubble is positioned exactly to hide that fact until it's ready for the joke, which I thought was also an example of you have to be very, very good at what you do to have done something like that.
Yeah, no, this is somebody who very much understands how comics work and how to tell jokes, because this series has amazing comedic timing.
Yeah, and it's also just the series is really great with show don't tell, where there is a lot of dialogue, but the dialogue is never redundant. It's just everything how the mom shows that she got in just simply by showing her diploma like everyone else did and not over explaining it or saying she was an entrance exam too, which would have really overdone the joke.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments, it is, not even one of the most bombastic ones. It's just the dad laying down with, his hand on his forehead, wow, your dad's finally gonna be a high schooler.
Oh, man. All right.
Yeah. A lot to say about this series, but yeah, we should move on.
Q&A time?
Q&A.
All right. Boys, girls, or non-binaries, let's get into the Q&A. So, because we actually cut a few of the sections, we are going to do an extra long Q&A just to make up for episode ROS being shorter. If you are interested in having your question answered, you can always tweet at us. You can email us at shonenflop@gmail.com or post on our Discord where we have a dedicated Q&A section. As always, if you DM us on Twitter or if you send us an email and you don't explicitly say, hey, you can put our name in, we will just say where we got it from. Otherwise, we'll say, because we assume if you're posting it publicly, you're fine with people knowing that you sent us that question. The first question comes from the Discord, and we have a brand new question asker, Xylon, who asked, you currently have the rank certified flop, flop, and not a flop. Have you ever considered adding any further rankings for series in the future? For example, a ranking for something that you think is barely a flop, or one that you think is so good that you'd be shocked it was so short and deserves something above not a flop. Jordan, what do you think?
So we have kicked around this idea once or twice of having a barely a flop label, I think. But I'm a little worried about overcomplicating it. The certified flop thing, I felt like it came out naturally. If we feel like we are constantly reading manga that are like just barely flops, we'll make that. But I feel like for most of them, it has been like, no, this is a flop.
Yeah, so my thought is I already view just a straight flop ranking to be if you're like a 5 or a 6, where you're an inoffensive series, like I would never read you recreationally, and then the certified flop is one that is objectively like, I really wasted my time having to read this. Barely a flop is already what I consider just a straight flop.
Yeah, like, I might consider a new tier for being barely not a flop, but I also just feel like that's what not a flop is.
To be honest, we don't read a lot of series that are not flops, so it's like hard to dignify, like that's also why we have Is This the Best We've Read So Far, to really highlight it, because that conversation really demonstrates, like for instance, like the gap between Time Paradox Ghostwriter, Samurai 8, and Morking isn't, I would say, really big, because it's already a pretty big hurdle to be called not a flop.
Yeah, I would agree. They are comparable. It doesn't feel like there is an extra tier. I will say on my personal tier list, I have an extra tier for Time Paradox Ghostwriter. It's just the Time Paradox Ghostwriter tier.
It's one step below the Chainsaw Man tier.
Yeah, well, I don't even have Chainsaw Man on there, because that's, like, not fair.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. All right, next, we have, what is your favorite manga running in Weekly Shonen Jump that is not One Piece? And that was sent to us by email.
David, you are far more caught up with Shonen Jump than I am. I, unfortunately, don't read a lot of the series that we don't do for this show. So, what would you say that your current favorite running Shonen Jump manga is?
I think for a long time I would have said Dr. Stone, but the America arc really was kind of like, it's not bad, but it's like 7 out of 10 when the series is normally like a 10 out of 10. I would say right now the first series I read after One Piece has been Mashal, where Mashal has really, really picked up. It still is keeping the comedy, the art has picked up dramatically, the plot is getting really interesting, because as we talked about, the creator of Mashal for a long time probably thought he was going to get canceled because he kind of made it as like a joke series, and now it's selling really well. I wouldn't be surprised if an anime isn't announced in 2022 or 2023. So that's really where I've been reading, where now it's actually starting to get really, really interesting.
It's all us.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. How about you, Jordan?
Technically, Chainsaw Man is still running. It's just on hiatus. We joke a lot.
Well, actually, it's not a Weekly Shonen Jump series anymore.
Fuck.
I figured you were going to say Hunter x Hunter, because that's technically still running.
Then I will fucking say Hunter x Hunter, because Hunter x Hunter rules. Hunter x Hunter is better than One Piece. Fucking fight me.
That sounds like that would be a fun Patreon episode to have you and me just argue about what's better, Hunter x Hunter or One Piece.
And I'll win.
Maybe. All right, next question is, who would your dream guest for Shonen Flop be?
I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I'm not even going to ask David because it's Super Eye Patch Wolf. David has been clear since day one. The ultimate goal of Shonen Flop is to get Super Eye Patch Wolf on an episode. That is absolutely David's goal.
We have had guests ask if they can do Zombie Powder, and we always have to say, nope, we're saving it for Super Eye Patch Wolf. If he ever sends us an email and says, sure, boys, I'll be on your show.
Yeah. I tried to go a different route. So, on one hand, the unfortunate thing with doing a manga podcast is that the people I would really want to talk to, the manga creators, there is a huge language gap. Like, sure, I would love to say, oh yeah, let's have Araki on, but, like, I don't think we'd be able to really have much of a conversation, unfortunately.
Yeah.
At least not in this way.
We can have Tucker as a translator.
Yeah. So, the guy that I wanted to have on here, who I think my dream would probably be Alan Moore.
I like how you stay modest.
This is a far-reaching one. I don't think we're gonna get Alan Moore on here. I'm just saying, like, if I could have anybody, it would be either Alan Moore or Grant Morrison, honestly. I was
gonna say that. Yeah, Grant Morrison or Neil Gaiman would be great.
Yeah. I would really like to hear a really good comic book author, their opinions on a shitty manga series. I think that it would be interesting.
You know what? Neil Gaiman, though, he actually is, like, active on Twitter. Fuck it, we'll tweet at him and see if he'll be on the show.
Yeah, why not? That would be awesome.
Fuck it, let's do it. Next up is from the Discord. It's from Trafalgar Wolfwood. Gomez the cat or Iggy the dog from JoJo Part 3. It's Gomez.
I think Gomez is a better person.
Yeah, Gomez definitely did better in high school than Iggy.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, Iggy's a dick.
Iggy's a dick, but he did have one of the best fights in Part 3.
I mean, look, I do love me some Iggy. Iggy's also gross as fuck. Gomez is a sweet cat. He just looks weird.
Yeah, and he just sits like a person.
He's a very sweet boy. He's just weird as fuck to look at.
Also, fun fact about Iggy, if you watch the first opening of JoJo Part 3, there's a part where you see a bunch of stars, and there's one star that is meeting up with the rest of, like, the shooting stars, and that represents Iggy. Because there's 5 stars together going over the horizon, and one coming in from the right in part of the theme song when they show, like, Earth.
Oh, that's awesome. Also, Iggy gets fucking ganked because he's a dog in a JoJo series. We had a friend over, our mutual friend Blake, yesterday, and I was explaining to him that dogs in JoJo constantly die. He'd never noticed it before. And then I realized, wait, the dog in Part 4 is already dead.
Oh, God.
That's why he doesn't get killed. He's already dead.
Speaking of Araki, though, this comes from BS in the Discord saying, what made you guys choose BT instead of a couple other short series Araki made? So actually, this came from Tucker. Tucker, from start to finish, picked what we were going to talk about. Originally, we thought about doing some of his other miniseries, but after reading it and realizing just because Araki has so much JoJo stuff to talk about, that I made a decision and said, hey, let's just do Cool Shock BT, because I definitely felt confident we were going to have an hour and a half of material, and we recorded for like 2 hours, so I was very right in my assumption that we didn't need to talk about anything else he's done.
Yeah.
I would certainly say it might be fun as like bonus content to go back to some of the other one-shots he's done.
I would love to check out Gorgeous Irene.
Yeah, that was the next one we were going to do if we included more than BT.
I feel like that was also just a very interesting place to look at Araki from. It was just a very interesting snapshot of the kind of writer he was, because the kind of writer he was kind of apparent from the absolute very beginning.
Exactly. And then our final question comes from Holly91. Hassan, great guy. He was on the show.
Hassan's wonderful.
The nicest guy in podcasting, as I like to call him. So he asks, what flop do you think nothing can save?
It's SWAT. Here's the thing, there's just nothing in SWAT. If somebody mentions Tokyo Shinobi Squad to me, or Bone Collection, I can remember things about that. Those made me angry, but that is still producing, like, some kind of emotion. You tell me to remember SWAT? Here's what I remember about SWAT. The main character is an asshole nerd, his friend wore a Met hat from Mega Man, and they had a third friend who was a girl with big titties. That's all I remember about SWAT.
Do you remember when I had to keep telling Aaliyah to make the boobs bigger because she kept drawing them at like regular sizes, and she would like keep sending me back like, listen, Aaliyah, you don't understand how extremely unnecessarily oversized the boobs on this girl are.
This is not like a tasteful drawing here.
She suffered a lot of emotional trauma from having to deal with that.
Thank you for your service, Aaliyah.
Aaliyah's great. I, however, will say Phantom Seer has no reason to exist. So it is like SWAT, where nothing of interest happens. But SWAT at least was a setting, like a high school students fighting that we hadn't covered. This series is literally, what if someone made Matsuma Security Busters a not funny series? So anyway, thank you everyone for your questions. I really appreciate everyone's come in. We love being able to answer these questions. It's always so difficult when someone sends it in that we don't answer them on the spot. So that just shows how great the questions you guys send in are. But yeah, I think that wraps it up.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hear what we have to say about fucking manga. Tune in next week for the full episode on Highschool Family. You can find us at shonenflop.com or on Twitter at shonenflopcast. Check us out. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify and iTunes. Basically, anywhere you get podcasts, we're probably there. We'll see you next week. And David?
Keep on flopping, floppers.